Hello, church. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie Shattenberg, and my wife Alyssa and I, we live and work in Madagascar as missionaries with our three children, Isabella, Eliana, and Gavin. And Doug asked us the other day to share with you guys some of the joys and hardships that we experience on the mission field. Now, that is a huge and loaded question, Doug. If you think about it, the joys and hardships always seem to be so intertwined. There's this great joy that you experience, but on the flip side of it, there's a hardship that often is associated or comes close by or nearby. And so they're very intertwined. It's like a paradox. When we went to Missionary Training Institute, they taught about this concept of the paradox, and they used two yellow ducks to help our children understand the pair of ducks. One duck was all dirty and marked up, and the other one was clean. And they were the yay duck and the yuck duck. And it was taught that we could use this to help us navigate the paradox of joys and hardships on the field with our children, is to ask at dinner time, so what was your yay ducks today, and what was your yuck ducks? And it's so true about this, the reality of joys and hardships. To give an example, in Madagascar, we have the great joy of having pets, and sometimes very unique pets. And so one time, we rescued a leopy lemur, this little tiny cute lemur that was a young juvenile, and it needed a family. And so we put this little lemur outside our front window, and we thought maybe he would live out in the trees, but he started coming to our window and calling for us because we would feed him. And this lemur fell in love with our family, and we fell in love with this lemur. And it would come in our house, and Alyssa would be cooking, be sitting on her neck, and just loved our family. But then this little lemur got sick, and after about 6 weeks to a month, 2 months, this little lemur, we watched it pass away and die. And the hardship and the loss of losing something that we enjoyed so much was so hard. And that's just the reality of life all over, that there's these joys and hardships. But on the mission field, we believe it's like tenfold. It comes out way stronger. And so I wrote out a list, and just thinking about, okay, the joys and the hardships that counter those as we walk through life in Madagascar on the mission field. And so one is that you have lots of friends. You meet people come into Madagascar, and you have friends all over the world, and yet you're saying goodbye to friends all the time. Always, it's like a revolving door. People come in and out of our lives so quickly, and people that we fall in love with, we enjoy, we want to be with, and then we have to say goodbye. And so, we have these friends that have been for a long time, but they're on opposite sides of the world many times. So we're constantly saying goodbye to our friends and people we know and love, and our families. The other thing is that we have the opportunity and the privilege to meet and share life with so many people, and yet we really don't feel known by anybody, because in one world, we have these friends in Madagascar that we know, and they know us in Madagascar. And then we have friends in the United States who know us, and they know us in the United States. But none of them know us in both worlds. And so you have a lot of friends, we know people, but we're not known by people. And it can become really lonely, because there's certain parts of our lives that just are not relatable in the opposite worlds. And so you live in two worlds, and you have friends, but there's a loneliness. A part of you is constantly lonely in both worlds. And that's a big hardship. Trying to discover who you are in each of those worlds and being able to share who you are is really hard. And then you get to experience really fun adventures. We go out and see different parts of the world. It's amazing. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of excitement. And yet there's constant change. And you can't get routines. And life is so you know that this something you're enjoying, it's temporary. It's not like okay, here we can play pickleball, but in Madagascar, no. Or here we can do this, but once we leave, it's gone. And so they're saying goodbye to things that you enjoy constantly, and not knowing when or if you can do those things again. And sometimes it's like, okay, I love to exercise, and maybe you can exercise here, and you can go to the gym, but then you get to Madagascar, it's hot. Where do you work out? People follow you. It's not the same. And it's constantly finding new ways to discover who you are, in a sense. And so you're constantly shifting between two worlds. And so routines are difficult. The things that get impacted are like the regular routines of a devotion life, a workout life, eating patterns, that all shifts constantly. And so there's no consistency. And that gets really difficult at times and can wear on. You can do it for a little bit, for long periods of time. That gets really hard. Another great joy is watching our children as they learn languages, they learn another culture, they have friends from different walks of life, and some in extreme poverty, some that aren't, and but they don't see it that way. That they know people from all different walks, and they grow up knowing different languages, and it's a beautiful thing to watch as they see this. They understand the world better, and they have a different world perspective. And yet, on the flip side, they're witnessing and seeing the tragedies of poverty, witnessing and seeing difficulties that are life changing. And so there's the brokenness that's in extremely impoverished families, and the brokenness that's witnessed on a regular basis with their friends as they experience things that are harder. And so it's a great experience, and yet with that experience comes some hardships and difficulties that you have to process and work through. And so there's this constant joy and hardship in the middle of that. We get invited into people's lives, like lately this last time back, deeply into people's lives. And as people are and we get to be a part of empowering the disempowered. We get to be like helping with healthcare and bringing jobs to people, helping people care for their families. And God is allowing us to be a part of something that's bringing transformation in a huge way. And there's people that are trapped in poverty, through poverty of spiritual poverty, emotional, all these traps, and through God's work in their lives, through the ministries that we're a part of, through Eden Projects, through the Maternity Center, we're able to alleviate the stresses of that poverty in some way, and actually help people come out of poverty by God's grace. And people start to invite us into their lives. And we've had the privilege of walking through struggled marriages, through people that were having didn't know what to make decisions. They made some really bad decisions that had long-lasting impacts, and how do they navigate that, and really inviting us into their lives to be able to share the love of Jesus, encourage them in the path, and really that they're starving. People are starving for, how do we walk in this relationship with our Savior, with Jesus Christ, with the power, with the guide, with somebody who can help us to make these right decisions in life. And so the privilege of walking with people through that is amazing and brings so much joy. And yet on the flip side, it opens our eyes to the depths of brokenness in this world, and how corrupt and evil is at work in such a powerful way. And we're seeing that what sin does in life to people. And we end up making enemies, people that want to destroy what's good that's happening. As we're creating income for people, we're also offsetting some of the structures of old that enable the powerful to stay powerful. And they don't like it. They don't like change. They don't like it when they lose their power over other people. And so they become enemies. Sometimes we feel like we have to walk looking over our shoulders. We have to be where there's wolves in sheep's clothing that come close to us, who are not there. We think they're there for us to be a part of it, and we're on one page, but no, they're there to destroy from the inside. So there's this constant battle as you're working with people. There's some that really want to destroy and they don't want to see change. They want to hold people in poverty. And when we're about what Christ is about, setting people free from sin, free from the traps of life, there are some people that don't like it, and so we create enemies. And I think that Jesus experienced that all through his time while he was here on earth. One of the other things that is a great joy is we get to see God at work in very tangible ways. But the hardest part for me is the fact that God is still working on me, that my life is still part of God's mission, even while on the mission field. And if I lose track of that and I forget that, I'm in trouble. I should never forget that I am still a part of God's mission, and it's the hardest one. It really is hard. I wrote a few things down around this because this journey into who I am, this is a hard one. And letting God open my eyes to myself, to open to the dark corners in me that I don't want to even admit are there, that is the hardest journey. And we are on this journey from our life of God wanting to really transform us from the inside. And it leads to great brokenness. But it's in that brokenness where God is at work in powerful ways. And through some of our most broken times is when God has impacted others, or we've seen God work in powerful ways through our brokenness. And it reminds me of, we've been reading a lot lately through the Psalms and just walking through the journey of David as he's the anointed, God's anointed one, and yet he's living in caves. He's hiding out. He's running because Saul is after him. And is in the Psalms that just, he talks and cries out to God, protection, help, defeat my enemies, but he always turns back and says, God is my Savior. God is my comforter. God is my shelter. I trust in you and trust in you alone. And that is how we make it through. Is that God is our shelter, our comforter. God is with us always. In the greatest of joys and in the darkest holes, the darkest cave that you find yourself in, God is there with you. And he is working inside of you, transforming you, forming into who he wants you to be and me to be, and then working through me and through you to encourage those in the world around us. And so there's a paradox that joys and hardships go back and forth. So I want to just really encourage each of you to let God continue to work in your life and through you to challenge those around you. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
This has been Wednesday Word with the Free Methodist Church of Santa Barbara. We hope you will join us for worship this week. We will be gathering live under the tent at 9:30 a.m. and we'll be live streaming the service online at 9:30 a.m. as well. We hope to see you there.